as well. Joining us now is Daily Signal senior editor Tyler O'Neill. And Tyler, the No Kings protests. Look, I actually was in the city, New York City. I saw some of them. Some of it is a joke. A lot of them didn't really seem to know what they were doing or talking about, a lot of the protesters. But here's what isn't a joke. The hatred of President Trump from the folks on the left and from the Democratic Party in general is still strong enough that they can get a lot of people to show up. Now, a lot of them, it was funny. I was on a subway with some of them on the way. They weren't saying it people. It's like they were going to a job. So they're kind of like assigned to do it. But again, that's not a joke. And so they need to be considered by Republicans this year and next year in these elections coming up. Just hating on Trump is enough to get people to come out and show up. It's sad because I don't think these people actually understand what they're standing for. They didn't seem to be coherent. But Tyler, you know, the Republicans can't laugh this off completely.
Yeah, I think these protests were very large. What we've seen is the left is in almost a terrified mode at this point, because right now what's happening in Virginia with the J. Jones texts and the way that that's drawing attention to the violence on the left, they're starting to really get scared about losing that race. And we saw them pull out none other than Barack Obama. You know, they're really pulling out the stops, trying to get Abigail Spanberger across the finish line so they can eke out a win despite what's happening. And of course, you know, we saw a lot of energy at those No Kings protests, but we also saw some really disturbing signs. One of my colleagues went and interviewed people at the protest in D.C., and one of the ladies that she interviewed expressed, you know, essentially joy that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated, comparing Charlie Kirk to Adolf Hitler, saying, you know, I'm very glad that Hitler is dead. And this sort of rhetoric continues to come up over and over again from different parts of the left. Now, we're not hearing a lot of elected officials say that, but we did hear from Jake Jones, you know, these horrible texts where he's defending political violence as a means of convincing those evil Republicans to no longer hold the positions that they hold. So we have to be careful here. We're not just seeing, you know, most of the protesters over the weekend were peaceful and were expressing their opinions, but this is also part of the left's infrastructure pushing to get more people out. I mean, as I covered, the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers, the largest teachers unions in the country, were promoting these protests. And I heard claims that I have not yet been able to verify that these unions were funding the protests. And I find that very easy to believe, given how many leftist activist things the NEA and the AFT have funded. They're big funders of the campaign I described as the woketopus, which sent far left woke activist ideas into the Biden administration and policy performers, you know, staff, to perform them in the federal government. So, you know, what we're seeing, the left is standing in the wings. They're afraid recently of what's going to happen next month, but they're also, you know, there is this growing hatred on the left. And I think it's really incumbent on the Democratic Party to call it out and to put daylight between them and people who would celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk.
Well, I think they're doing the opposite of that, Tyler. I think they're stoking it. I think that there are plenty of leaders in the Democratic Party who are just doing politics as usual. But when you talk, you know, you give us the anecdote of someone who's comparing Charlie Kirk to Hitler and is happy that he was murdered. That's the impact. They're looking at this and saying these people are mentally ill. These people can be made to believe and to fear almost anything, and that's just too tempting. That's just too tempting for Randy Weingarten at the teachers union. It's just too tempting for Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Even though if they were smarter, they'd realize a group like that's that unhinged can turn on you in a second. And it's just amazing to me, but they're stoking those flames. And that is really, I agree with you, that is really the scary thing. I'm happy that I didn't expect any violence from these events over the weekend. That's because they weren't marching on an ICE facility or marching on the White House or something like that. But they could have some of them could have easily been motivated to do that. That's the scary part. Well,